Let's take a look at Token Action HUD for Dragonbane. So Token Action HUD comes in two pieces. There's a core module, and then there are modules written for specific game systems. You need them both for Token Action HUD to function. So in this case, I've written one for Free League's Dragonbane system. This is a new campaign we're going to be starting this fall, and my group, who had been previously playing 5e in the Curse of Strahd campaign for quite some time, had grown accustomed to that module. And I just wanted to bring as many modules forward into our fall campaign to just make the Foundry interface feel at home. I also really like the Dragonbane system, and I thought there might be a couple cool things that we could do with it. Token Action HUD at its core is a way for you to surface certain things from your character sheet, make them accessible during combat or gameplay without having to keep your character sheet open all the time, which often sacrifices critical screen real estate. So you can surface your combat actions, your spells, your saves, your equipment, and sometimes there's even utilities associated with the HUD. Before we dive into the HUD, let's take a look at module settings for both. There are a couple of things you will probably want to disable in the core settings. Most of these things you can leave as is, but I would suggest unchecking Always Show HUD. This means the HUD will disappear when you don't have a token selected. And I would probably turn off the tooltips because there are no tooltips in the Dragonbane system, and it just ends up duplicating the button name and kind of looks weird. If we jump over to the Dragonbane settings, this is where you can enable and disable all different parts of the HUD. You will see this as we go through it. I'm going to leave everything on so you can see it, but it's just a matter of how clean you want the HUD is during gameplay. There are probably two things worth pointing out here, and this is the severe injury table and the fear effect table. Currently, this module is published for English and Swedish, and it will auto-detect the tables that come in the core system. You don't have to fill this out, but if you want to homebrew a table, expand a table, you can build one in your Foundry system and then just copy the UUID of that table into these fields, and it will then use those tables whenever you make one of these roles instead of the core table. All right, so let's see this in action. When you click on a token that you control, you're going to be presented with the HUD. First thing to note is that you can unlock this, right-click on a button, and position it wherever you want. So let's start with stats. Under stats, you're going to see hit points, willpower, movement, encumbrance, the ability to make simple attribute rolls, and if you are so unlucky as to have injuries, those will also show up here. Willpower and hit points will start off as white, turn yellow when you're partially wounded, and red when you're severely wounded. Likewise, encumbrance will turn red if you are over-encumbered. The other thing to note is that injuries are considered items in the Dragonbane system, so are abilities and spells and all of that. Anything that is an item in the system can be right-clicked on in the Token Action HUD to bring up the detailed item card. Probably the most useful part of the HUD is during combat. So if I want to make an attack, I can just go up to combat and choose my weapon, and I'm presented with a very familiar attack dialog window. Remember, in the settings you could show all weapons in your inventory or equipped weapons. Here we're only showing equipped weapons, but if you wanted to show all of them, you could, and then in that case any weapons that were actually equipped would have a small cross swords to the left of the name. Also presented here are some common combat actions that just trigger the associated skill or attribute roll. They're just here for a quick reminder that you have access to them. Similar is skills. So for skills, we have core, weapon, and secondary skills. If you have magic abilities, you can hide the weapon skills and the secondary skills if you want a cleaner HUD experience. But again, these are showing you what your skill value from the associated attribute is, and you can simply right-click on these to get the card, or left-click them to make the associated roll. Let's also go back to spells really quick. Spells, much like combat, will be listed, and again you can right-click them to get the detailed spell card, or you can click on them to cast. There is a setting option that says show me all the spells I know or only show me the prepared spells. In this case, we're looking at prepared spells, and much like weapons, if we showed all of our spells, the prepared spells would have I think it's a little orange lightning bolt to the left of the name to show that they are prepared. You can also see your abilities. Your heroic or kin abilities are here. Again, quickly get the information, or if you want to use them, left click them and spend the willpower to do so. You can also manage your conditions through the HUD. Now, conditions, of course, typically are managed through the flyout menu here. This works in tandem with my other module, the Dragonbane status effect, which I do have installed. You don't need that for the Token Action HUD, but it does kind of give a few extra bells and whistles. As you see, these are broken up into categories, and when I look at them in the HUD, those are similar categories here. But you can enable any of these through the HUD, and you can see that they highlight and kind of go to the front of the list. And you also will note that the attribute conditions, those are synced to the character sheet. So if I make myself angry, you'll see angry also fires on the character sheet, and if I remove it from the character sheet, it's now gone from here. One thing to note is that if you're using like defreds or visual After Effects, like how I show my status effects up here, I wouldn't cancel attribute effects from up here because the cancellation does not sync back to the character sheet, and things can get a little weird. So you can also take a look at your inventory. This is going to show you everything in your inventory and put the little cross swords to the left of the name if it's equipped. There's really not much you can do with the inventory other than, you know, one, see what you have, and two, right click it to get additional information. Utilities is kind of the leftover catch-all category. However, there's some important things in there. The first being your rest mechanics. Again, these are synced to the character sheet, so if I say I'd already taken my round rest and I come up here, you're going to see that it's red to show me that I've already used it, and if I mouse over it, it's going to say no, and if I click on it, it's going to say, hey, you've already taken your round rest. So if I were to take my stretch rest, you'll see that also syncs back to the character sheet, and then likewise, you know, if I take my full shift or pass a shift, it'll clear them all, and they all become available in the Token Action HUD again. Below that, much like the combat actions, are several journey actions. Most of these are bushcraft related, but again, they're just here as a reminder of what you can do when you're on a journey. The last three are kind of custom ones that I've built. First is the light test. So when you have a torch or a lantern, there may be certain things that require you to test to see if the light goes out. That's what this button does. So when you click that, it brings up this dialog box. It's going to give you kind of the basic rules for all the various lights. In this case, this character has no light sources on them because if I did, one of these would be highlighted green. So if I take a look at the thief and do the same thing, you'll see, oh, she has a lantern and a torch. In that case, I would pick the light source from this drop down that I want to test and roll the light test. In this case, my light remains lit. If I were to roll a 1, it would say my light went out. That's pretty much all that does. It doesn't manage inventory or anything like that. It's just a little bit of extra flair for light tests. Fear tests, again, they're a will test. When these are rolled, two things can happen. One, fear tests can be pushed, so it is a standard roll. And if you're successful, well, in this case, I'm not successful. You'll see that I do get the standard push roll, and I get this secondary chat message that says, hey, if my will roll fails, I got to roll on the fear table. This gives me the opportunity to try to push it, and if I did push it and become exhausted and was successful, I could simply ignore this chat message. But let's say I pushed and still failed, or maybe I don't want to push. Then I have to roll on that fear table, and I can simply click this button to get a quick result directly from that table. Only the character initiating the fear test or the GM can click on that fear table button. If another player tries to, they'll just get a UI notification saying that they don't have permissions to do so. And then the last one, which is pretty similar to a fear test, is the severe injury roll. This is a contest that can be pushed, so let's fail it on purpose. Hopefully. And when I fail it, it gives me the ability, much like the fear test, to roll on the severe injury table. And the nice thing about this is if I did take a deep wounds, I could just click that, drag it right on top of my character, and now my character has the deep wounds injury effect. All right, let's look at how the HUD differs a little bit for NPCs and monsters. NPCs are very similar to characters. They're going to have combat, skills, conditions, inventory, and access to some of the utilities. They don't have access to, say, like the rest actions or the severe injury rolls. The one major difference for NPCs is that under stats, you're going to have this traits section. And what this is going to do is just whisper the GM the associated traits for this orc warrior. This is just a way for you to gain access to that information quickly without having to pull up the character sheet. Other than that, NPCs are very similar to PCs. Monsters are simpler but very different. Under stats, they're also going to show their ferocity, and at the same time, you'll also be able to surface their traits, much like we just did with the orc warrior. And the big difference is they just don't have access to a lot of the things that PCs and NPCs do, but they do have this monster category. This is going to allow you to make random monster attacks, specific monster attacks, or dodge and parry. So if I click on one of these, it'll make the standard roll, and it'll report the attack like normal. You can see there's some slightly different styling to this chat, but otherwise it works exactly the same. Or I could pick a specific attack, or make my dodge or parry at 15 or under. One last thing I forgot. If your character is at 0 hit points, then under the combat section for that character, you will now have a death roll ability under combat actions. This makes your standard constitution test, and this roll is also synced to the character sheet. So in this case, I succeeded because it's under my con, and you'll see I now have a success mark under this death roll. If I were to fail that, likewise, well, with a demon, I'm going to get 2 failures. So that only shows when your character's at 0 hit points. So those are the basics for the Token Action HUD for Dragonbane. It's gone through kind of several versions, but I like where it's sitting at right now. It's doing just about everything I can think of, but I'm always open for suggestions or improvements to the module. So if you use it, let me know how you like it.